finished writing about Wendelin the Weird and paused to listen again. The silence in the dark house was broken only by the distant grunting snores of his enormous cousin Dudley. It must be very late, Harry thought. His eyes were itching with tiredness. Perhaps he'd finish his essay tomorrow night. He replaced the top of the ink bottle, pulled an old pillowcase from under his bed, put the flashlight, a history of magic, his essay, quill, and ink inside it, got out of bed and hid a lot under a loose floorboard under his bed. Then he stood up, stretched, and checked the time on the luminous alarm clock on his bedside table. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Harry's stomach gave a funny jolt. He had been 13 years old without realizing it, for a whole hour. Yet another unusual thing about Harry was how he looked forward to his birthday. He had never received a birthday card in his life. The Dudleys had completely ignored his last 2 birthdays, and he had no reason to suppose they would remember this one. Harry walked across the dark room, past Hedwig's large empty cage. To open the window, he leaned on the sill. The cool night air has been absent for 2 nights now. Harry wasn't worried about her. She'd been gone this long before. But he hoped she'd come back soon. She was the only living creature in this house who didn't flinch at the sight of him. Harry, thought still rather small and skinny for his age, had grown a few inches over the last year. His jet black hair, however, was just as it always had been, stubbornly untidy. Whatever he did to it, the eyes behind his glasses were bright green, and on his forehead, clearly visible through his hair, was a thin scar shaped like a bolt of lightning. Of all the unusual things about Harry, the scar was the most extraordinary of all. It was not, as the Dudleys had pretended, for 10 years a souvenir of the car crash that had killed Harry's parents. Because Lily and James Potter had not died in a car crash. They had been murdered by the most feared dark wizard for 100 years, Lord Voldemort. Harry had escaped from the same attack with nothing more than a scar on his forehead, where Voldemort's curse, instead of killing him, had rebounded upon its originator. Barely alive, Voldemort had fled, but Harry had come face to face with them at Hogwarts. Remembering their last meeting, as he stood at the dark window, Harry had to admit he was lucky even to have reached his 13th birthday. He scanned the starry sky for a sign of Hedwig, perhaps soaring back to him with a dead mouse dangling from her beak, expecting praise. Gazing absently over the rooftops, it was a few seconds before Harry realized that he was seeing. Silhouetted against the golden moon, that growing larger every moment, was a large, strangely lopsided creature, and it was flapping in Harry's direction. He stood quite still, watching it sink lower and lower. For a split reason, he hesitated, his hand on the window latch, wondering whether to slam it shut. But then the lizard creature soared over one of the street lamps of Privet Drive, and Harry, realizing it, was leapt aside. Through the window saw 3 owls, 2 of them holding up the third, which appeared to be unconscious. They landed with a soft flump on Harry's bed, and the middle owl, which was large and gray, kneeled right over and lay motionless. There was a large package tied to its legs. Harry recognized the unconscious owl at once. His name was Errol, and he belonged to the Weasley family. Harry dashed to the bed and tied the cords around Errol's leg, took off the parcel, and then carried Errol to Hedwig's cage. Errol opened one bleary eye, gave a feeble hoot of thanks, and began to gulp some water. Harry turned back to the remaining owls. One of them, the large snow female, was his own Hedwig. She too was carrying a parcel and looked extremely pleased with herself. She gave Harry an affectionate nip with her beak as he moved her burden, then flew across the room to join Errol. Harry didn't recognize the third owl, a handsome tawny one, but he knew at once where it came from, because in addition to a third package, it was carrying a letter bearing the Hogwarts crest. When Harry relieved the owl of its burden, it ruffled its feather importantly, stretched its wings, and took off the window into the night. Harry sat down on his bed and grabbed Errol's package, ripped off from the brown paper, and discovered a present wrapped in gold and his ever birthday card. Fingers trembling slightly, he opened the envelope. 2 pieces of paper fell out, a letter and a newspaper clipping. The clipping had clearly came out from the wizarding newspaper, the Daily Prophet, because the people in the black and white picture were moving. Harry picked up the clipping, smoothed it out, and read, Ministry of Magic Employee Scoops Grand Prize. Arthur Weasley, head of the Mistress of Muggle Artifacts Office at the Ministry of Magic. He won the New Daily Prophet Grand Prize Gallant Draw. A delighted Mr. Weasley told the Daily Prophet, "We will be spending the gold on a summer holiday in Egypt, where our eldest son Bill works as a curse breaker for Gringotts Wizarding Bank. The Weasley family will be spending a month in Egypt, returning for the start of the new school year at Hogwarts, which 5 of the Weasley children currently attend." Harry scanned in the moving photograph, and a grin spread across his face as he saw all of the Weasleys waving furiously at him. Standing in front of a large pyramid, plump little Mrs. Weasley, tall, balding Mr. Weasley, 6 sons and 1 daughter. All through the black and white picture, didn't saw it, with flaming red hair. Right in the middle of the picture was Ron, tall and youngling, with his red scabbers on his shoulder and his arms around his little sister Ginny. Harry couldn't think of anyone who deserved to win a large pile of gold more than the Weasleys, who were very nice and extremely poor. He picked up Ron's letter and unfolded it. "Dear Harry, happy birthday. Look, I'm really sorry about the telephone call. I hope the Muggles didn't give you a hard time. I asked Dad, and he reckons I shouldn't have said it. It's amazing here in Egypt. Bill's taken us around all the tombs, and you wouldn't believe the curse those old Egyptian wizards put of them. Mom wouldn't let Jeannie come in the last one. There were all these mutant skeletons in there of muggles who'd broken in and grown extra heads and stuff. I couldn't believe it when Dad won the daily profit draw. 700 gallons. Most of it's going on this trip, but they're going to buy me a new wand for next year. Harry remembered only too well the occasion when Ron's old wand had snapped. It had happened when the car the two of them had flying between two Hogwarts had crashed into a tree on the school grounds. We'll be back about a week before term starts, and we'll be going up to London to get my wand and new boots. Any chance of meeting you there? Don't let the muggles get you down. Try and come to London, Ron. P.S. Percy's head boy. He's got the letter last week. Harry glanced back at the photograph. Percy, who was his 7th and final year at Hogwarts, was looking particularly small. He has pinned his head boy badge to the bed, perched genuinely on top of his neat hair, his horn-rimmed glasses flashing in the Egyptian sun. Harry now turned to his present and unwrapped it. Inside was what looked like a miniature glass spinning top. There was another note from Ron beneath it. Harry, this is a pocket sneaker rope. If there's someone untrustworthy around, it's supposed to light up and spin. Bill says it's rubbish, sold for wizards, tourists, and isn't reliable because it kept lighting up at dinner last night, but he didn't realize Fred and George had put beetles in his soup. By Ron. Harry put the pocket sneakoscope on his bed table, where it stood quite still, balanced on its point, reflecting the luminous hands of its clock. He looked at it happily for a few seconds, then picked up the pencil Hedwig had brought. Inside there, too, there was a wrapped present, a card and a letter, this time from Hermione. Dear Harry, Ron wrote to me and told me about his phone call to your Uncle Vernon. I do hope you're all right. I'm on holiday in France at the moment, and I didn't know how I was going to send this to you. What if they'd open it at customs, but then Hedwig turned up? I think she wanted to make sure you got something for your birthday for a change. I bought your present by our old order. There was an advertisement in the Daily Prophet. I've been getting it delivered, so it's good to keep up with what's going on in the wizard's world. Did you see that picture of Ron and his family a week ago? I bet he's learning lots. I'm really jealous. The ancient Egyptian wizard was fascinating. There's something interesting local history of witchcraft here too. I've rewritten my whole history of magic essay to include some of things I found out. I hope it's not too long. It's 2 rows of parchment, more than Professor Beans asked for. Ron says he's going to be in London in the last week of the holidays. Can you make it? Will your aunt and uncle let you come? I really hope you can. If not, I'll see you at Hogwarts Express on September 1st. Love from Hermione.